So Rebuild Florida's IRMA program, it is our main program from the 2017 IRMA hurricane that really helps Floridians either repair or rebuild their home, focusing on Floridians who didn't have insurance coverage, Floridians who didn't have a lot, if any, help at all from FEMA, prioritizing Floridians who are probably 80% or below the area median income, low to moderate income Floridians, prioritizing Floridians who have a senior in the home, a child in the home, someone who perhaps might be disabled in the home. So really, it's the state's housing program for IRMA impacted communities, for people who really have no other means themselves to make that repair. And trying to, I want to say overall, will probably affect about 4,000 homeowners. Yeah.
How much, if you know this off here, how much did the state receive for Rebuild Florida's Hurricane Irma repair and replacement program?
The overall program was somewhere around $800 and something million. It was for more than just housing.
Yes, sir. 812 million.
Yeah.
Total.
How much would have been used for the repair and replacement program?
About 480 million.
So $480 million
Yes.
for almost 4,000.
Right.
4,000 homes in 47 counties.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we know that a lot of money was spent in this program, and I know that you guys have. How many people would you say is like 100% marked complete from this program?
Right now, there's over 3,600 that are totally complete.
Okay.
Getting closer to 37.
And where are we at with the other ones?
The other 300?
Yes.
We're in active construction right now. So this program is set to end this year, to close out this year.
And you're hoping that everybody will be in their homes by
The end of this
December
year.
31st, 2024.
Those homes are supposed to be complete in July.
And you will hopefully
year.
be able to mark
Yeah, exactly.
complete. The people that we spoke to in speaking with Rose is telling her that, I think we've spoken to dozens of people at this point, and we've looked at dozens of contracts. A lot of the people we spoke to, watchdog groups would look at these contracts that are going from an original price to the final scope of work, and they would look at this and they might say that this project was mismanaged and there was a lack of oversight. What would you guys say to that?
I think they're probably looking at a few small exceptions to the cost. Certainly, the Rebuild Florida program is not somehow immune to supply chain costs, construction costs, which construction costs have increased all around the country, not just for this program. And in particular, if you think a lot of the homes that we're talking about, the actual original evaluation and contract for those homes was done prior to 2019. So prior to a lot of these inflationary increases that we're seeing throughout the construction industry. So a lot of what I think they're looking at are just cost of inflation, cost of construction that have increased everywhere. The other thing that I think is important too with a program like Rebuild, if you have a homeowner, a family who perhaps it's not safe for them to be in the home while it's being repaired, the state of Florida has opted to actually pick up the cost of whatever their temporary housing is. So let's say that home's being repaired, it's not safe. Obviously, you don't want someone in harm's way. So if that person's staying in a hotel, the state of Florida is picking up that cost. So that sometimes is the increased cost.
We know from a 2022 audit from the federal government, they looked at just 7 properties and said that the state spent over $107,000 from those 7 properties that they looked at. We looked at a dozen more contracts. One, for example, going from $103,000 to $877,000. Is that inflation, or is that questionable how we have an original scope to a final scope of work?
If that's the home that we're thinking of, there was one home that the original contractor didn't realize was actually a historic property. It was a historic registered property. And once we start the project, we need to complete the project. Of course, keep in mind, this is still a homeowner who is ultimately someone who didn't have insurance, didn't have support from FEMA, falls into those categories, significantly low to moderate income, has other vulnerabilities that make it so that they can't do these repairs themselves. And so that particular home was one where the contractor didn't realize it was a historic registered property. Once we start the project, though, we have to complete the project. So that person was a vulnerable individual. That's a unique one-off situation. And we actually have changed the program since. Back when IRMA program started, a historic registered property could actually get covered under it. We've changed it since actually because of that example, so that if that same thing were to recur now, that home wouldn't be eligible.
I think that was probably the most dramatic. We did find one going from an original scope from 49,000 to 342,000 up in Jacksonville. Another one going from 39,000 to 246,000. We had one here that went from 98,000 to 198,000. So we're seeing these like double, triple, quadruple prices. And so is that inflation, or is that, again, questionable to you, a contract like that?
Well, we don't pay the cost if the cost is questionable. Justin and his team review every single invoice. They scrutinize every invoice. So if there is something that is all questionable about why that cost is being passed on through the program, if it's not allowable, we don't pay it. But there are circumstances where individuals need some sort of allowance or exception. It may be something related to a disability they have, and that may be something that the contractor didn't originally envision. So if you're making an accommodation for someone's home because of a disability perhaps, and it's something that's necessary for them to be safe, that could increase the cost. So, you know, there's not an invoice that's paid that's not scrutinized carefully.
Have you, Justin, have you questioned some of these contracts that are coming through? We'll talk to recipients who say the contractors haven't been at our house and they're continuing to charge for this project. Have you guys looked at any contracts and red flagged any? Has anybody been held accountable for any contract that maybe you noticed maybe was inflated?
Yes, so our priority is to put these people into decent, safe, and sanitary homes. And so sometimes from that original scope that was done in 2019, when we go back to do the work, we find that there is other work required to put them back into the decent, safe, and sanitary home. And so something that we have done in the past few years in the IRMA program is impact some financial consequences on these contractors and the vendor. And we have done that when we look at the time that it has taken or if something was not done correctly.
I know that you mentioned the hotel bills and putting people up in the hotel, and I know that's the state, but that's still taxpayer money, correct?
This is all money, it's taxpayer money, yes. It's all money that comes through HUD that's awarded to the state as part of the recovery.
Because I know we spoke to the one family here that their hotel bill was $101,000. We had another family that showed us a hotel bill for $232,000. It would seem that the people that were in the hotel bill, in these hotels, maybe that their homes would be given a priority, so that there was like a wise use of taxpayer money. Putting somebody in a hotel for 2+ years, is that a wise use of taxpayer money?
No, I mean, we have some frustration with our contractor for this program. Some of the more complicated cases where homeowners had, you know, as Justin mentioned, circumstances that maybe weren't originally evident when the contractor first looked at the home, extra repairs that were needed to make the home safe. We have found, and it's frustrating to see that that in some of the more complicated cases, basically, we think that our contractor essentially moved those to the back as opposed to managing those more effectively on the front end. So that is something that has resulted in, I want to say we've withheld probably $3.5 million from our main contractor since September of 21 because we question those situations where, you know, why put off and delay the more complicated situations? Why not address them head on?
Was that Timberline?
No, that's the IEM.
Oh, IEM, okay,
Yeah.
the recovery agency, okay. One family that we spoke to here, Robert Myers and Jane Moores, they had a ramp installed and a shingle roof fixed and crews put in a bathtub. The project cost $77,000. Their scope of work doubled from the original price. I think the original price was $41,000, but their hotel room bill was more than that. That's the hotel room bill, that was $101,000. They were in a hotel for 423 days for minimal repairs. They were told that they were going to get a ramp that basically went around their home because she's disabled, so it's supposed to go like around the carport stairs to the front is what we were told. And then this is what they were given after 433 days in a hotel. It's a ramp that basically, the carport's here, and what the original scope of work. And they spent a hotel, and then inside the home, and we have video of it, there's spackle on the walls, there's cracked windows, but they get a letter from Rebuild saying that this project is complete, even though they complained and complained that this project is not complete. Hearing stuff like that, would you say a project like that is complete?
So we have our team on the ground. They've been communicating and visiting with these homeowners. And if they find anything that needs to be addressed, we are going to address it. These folks are our priority, and we're going to help them.
And I want to add too, if our contractor signed off on something as complete, and if it's not actually consistent with the work, in other words, if they're essentially lying and they're saying something is complete but it's not complete, that could be an actual case of fraud. So there's a pretty serious ramification for that contractor if they're basically representing that something was complete and then it turns out did something different or didn't do the work at all.
I know now that there's boots on the ground talking to a lot of these people. They're like, we've complained, nobody answers, they go unnoticed. Is that changing now for these people?
Yeah, unfortunately, there seems to be some communication issues, and our team hasn't heard from all of these people prior to this, but we're going to make sure in our future storms that we've just launched Ian on April 1, that we have clear communication, clear expectations. You know, there's a lot of lessons learned.
And the difficult story that's probably coming up in a few of these homes is that they're saying they were contacting IEM pretty consistently. They were very happy to see one of our staff or hear from one of our team giving them a phone call. But they are pretty consistently telling us that they've left messages for IEM, not gotten phone calls back for some time. So we're getting appreciation for when they're hearing from us, but they're also expressing that they've not heard from the contractor for some time.
Now, I know on your guys' website, that's kind of where the complaint form section is, and that's where people say they're complaining. Is that you guys responding to those, or is that what IEM was responding to? Who was getting those complaints that they were emailing on the Rebuild Florida website?
That's going to IEM.
And that's who was
And IEM is supposed to communicate that to our in-office team, and a lot of these were not.
And just bringing up IEM, we know that they were given I think the contract was $252 million with the state to run this program after Irma. I think they were even required to do audits. Did they do what they were paid to do?
I think we're finding clearly that you have homeowners who are saying that they can't get in touch with them, and we're finding some of these homeowners. And some of the folks that we're going to see, they're saying the project was completed and they're happy with it. But we're definitely finding as we're actually going to some of these homes here the last couple of weeks that we're finding that some of these folks are saying that, you know, this is not the work that it was supposed to be. I can't get anybody from IEM. I can't get a hold of anybody from IEM. So I mean, certainly that's a huge problem. It certainly brings into question, you know, our working relationship with the contractor. We obviously want to see the program through. There's still probably a little more than 300 homes that we need to complete, and we want to make sure they get done because ultimately there's people waiting for them. But it is extremely disappointing and challenging to hear that people can't get a hold of IEM. And then obviously, you know, there are some real examples of people whose homes were not completed. In some cases, you know, punch list items that were just simply not done, but it appears that someone from IEM signed off on the work as being complete. So it's a pretty huge concern.
And I think so too, because then it's kind of part of that statistic, right? Like, oh, we finished these many homes. It's like, are these homes actually complete? Where you guys would say that they were complete.
Well, and we've heard from a number of homeowners who thanked us. We have video testimonies, written testimonials from homeowners who thanked us throughout the program, and we'll certainly get those to you. So we're grateful to hear from that. I really believe most of those 3,600 homes that are completed, but for the couple, 3 dozen that we're hearing from who have these different challenges, I would say probably at least half of those. Their issue that they're indicating is that they just can't get someone from IEM on the phone.
Yeah, and we spoke to an insider at IEM we spoke to 2 insiders actually who works at IEM anonymously, and they say, look, we were working for IEM in Texas. It seemed that things ran smoothly, but here in Florida, it just seems like nothing ever went smooth. Did they ever bring any concerns to you guys? Did you ever hear about any of this before?
Did IEM? We've certainly brought concerns to them. You know, I had in my office about 3 weeks ago sit down with their leadership. I would say probably a come to Jesus meeting. The main purpose of the meeting was that they were getting off schedule. Their workload month to month was dropping. The contract requires they complete about 150 homes a month, and their completion numbers started dropping pretty significantly. So they had to come and explain that to us in person. And so it was a pretty disappointing response overall from the company, because the kinds of excuses we heard were, where they were basically blaming the homeowners. They were basically talking about some of the more challenging cases, and really, I think you get paid good money to construct a home, to repair a home, or in their case, to manage a group of construction contractors. I think the job is to manage those cases, and the job is to get the homes completed and repaired, no matter how challenging it may be.
And now, have you guys held IEM accountable?
Absolutely.
Yes, we have. If they do not meet the contracted 150 homes completed a month, there are financial consequences imposed. And like Secretary Kelly said, we've withheld between $3.5 and $4 million.
Yeah.
Now, did this meeting, I know you said this meeting was 3 weeks ago, was this meeting made after we started calling you guys, or were you guys already aware of what was going on?
This meeting happened because overall they weren't completing homes at the pace they were supposed to. So it was prior to hearing from you. It didn't have to do with specific homeowners. It had to do with, again, their overall performance. It's a performance-driven contract. In fact, the reason, just to give you a little history, the reason why it's a performance-driven contract is IEM. Give or take around September of 2021, we had to really pull IEM in at the time because their performance, they weren't keeping up with the pace required, the pace needed to complete the program in a reasonable time. And so we actually changed their contract to a performance-driven contract. Mm-hmm. They have to complete 150 homes per month. There's a number of other provisions that they have to meet. They have to hold their subcontractors more accountable. They weren't holding their subcontractors. They weren't really overseeing the work of their subcontractors. So the contract was changed. It became a performance-driven contract. So fast forward to now, their performance was, in terms of completing homes, was okay for a while. But towards the end of last year, the beginning of this year, that the numbers started to drop, and their February numbers were alarmingly low. And so at that point, that we had to bring them in for a higher level conversation. And I really had to personally corner them on what is actually happening here. I heard excuses that just, I think for the most part, put the blame on the homeowner, which is not appropriate, and not something that was acceptable. We've withheld, as Justin said, about $3.5 to $4 million from them since September of 2021, if they don't meet performance, and so it was focused on that overall.
Because I know when we went out to Mary Simpson's home out in, I think she's in Mononasassa, and she's one that's still been waiting for her home, but she's been waiting for her trailer. And we were literally out there for the interview, and she breaks down in tears because she finally saw the truck pulling down the road, and she's like, I can't believe this. We didn't even know that was going to happen. She didn't know it was going to happen, and her mobile home was arrived a couple hours later. But, we're talking, 2024 from a program that she signed for 2019, thinking that the mobile home was going to be repaired or replaced in 90 days, and now we're here years later. We've heard from lots of people, not lots of people, I'll say dozens of people, projects that they thought would just take months, took years. Some people, of course, are still waiting. Why?
Well, in some cases, the state of Florida didn't have enough funding for some of these individuals. The funding that Florida received from HUD for the IRMA program was not enough. And so some of those individuals who just now had maybe that mobile home repair or replaced, some of those individuals we didn't have enough money for. We've done some things over the last few years to move dollars around because, and we actually had to, my predecessor actually had to write a letter to HUD explaining that at the time, I think we had, I think the projected funding shortfall was about an estimated 541 homes worth of funding that we needed. We've done some creative things to move some funds around. So some of those homeowners, including some of the ones that we've been visiting the last couple of weeks, it's only because we moved some dollars around and got creative. We didn't get extra support from HUD, so because we got creative, moved dollars around, we were able to add them to serving them. They might not just realize the sort of dollars we had to move around to make it work, but there was not adequate funding to serve them from the beginning.
And I think HUD, I got the HUD's response letter to that, and I think they basically said, we're not giving you more money, you can switch things around, and so that's basically what it had to come down to. They didn't give you guys, I know you guys wrote the letter to HUD, but they didn't come back giving any more funding.
We're used to getting the cold shoulder from HUD in that regard, and it's true of more than just the IRMA program, the Ian program, which we've just launched April 1. The Ian program, we've got a total of $910 million to spend in 20 counties, but the estimate that we had done by a third party estimated that we needed about $2.5 billion. So we've had to figure out, and we'll figure out how to prioritize those who need the support the most. We've still never received anything for Adalia. The Michael program, which is completed, housing program, it's been completed. We learned a lot from the IRMA program about how to prioritize differently, given that the dollars that come from these programs are usually not enough. We were given the ability to at least move some dollars around to help add some homeowners, which is good. They've had to wait too long, but it's good that we were at least given some flexibility to move some other dollars around and support those homeowners.
The Hurricane Michael program is the fastest in the country that's ever completed.
How many people did you guys at Hurricane?
Almost 1,000.
Okay. And then we've talked to a lot of these people who say they've complained and have heard nothing back. How are you addressing their concerns now?
Well, number one, the IM will be held accountable if they're not hearing back, and number two, we're always going to the number one priority really is we're always going to focus on making sure the work is completed, and so whatever that takes. The process was started. There's work started in our house. If there was a promise made, it's to make sure the work is completed.
Going forward, because I know that Hurricane Ian applications are being taken right now. They look at this and they see these people who's, say that the program wasn't what they thought it was going to be. How can someone signing up for this program now know things will be different?
Well, number one, I think it's important that there are over 3,600 homes completed.
Over 4,600 in between both programs.
Oh, between Michael as well,
yes,
yeah.
Sir.
And I think it's important to know too that we've learned a lot. We inherited this IRMA program from the prior administration. We inherited a program that was underfunded, and we inherited a program that I think probably there were more promises made on the front end than could be delivered upon. So I think overall we've learned a lot. We've switched to a performance-based contracting for this reason, because of this IRMA program, because ultimately there has to be accountability to make sure that projects are completed on time and on budget. And I think no matter what, our number one focus again is always going to be making sure that that person's restored into a safe place to live, and that's the goal. We're personally visiting, talking with all of these homeowners that have brought forward concerns, because we need to understand what the problems are. Thankfully, some of them are saying that they're okay, but some of them are bringing up real concerns, and we're going to see them through that. No matter what, no matter how challenging it is, we're going to see the homeowner through those concerns.
Would you say that there are changes being made after we brought you guys these complaints and these findings from contracts? Are there things that you guys are doing now differently?
Well, we're on the ground. We're visiting with these homeowners, and we will ensure that if we find anything that we do not think is safe or decent, we will repair it.
We spoke. What did you say? Oh, sorry. Okay. Now, when we talked about the contracts, we've heard complaints against contractors themselves doing shoddy work. Have you guys held any contractors accountable, not just IEM? Have you gone in and held any of the contractors accountable?
Yeah.
And what has that been?
We've imposed financial consequences on contractors as well.
Have you guys put any pauses on any contractors?
Yes, we've not renewed contracts before.
Okay. I think that was the thing. I know that you guys are the ones that assign the contractors, or IEM assigns the contractors.
So the previous model was the contract was directly with FloridaCommerce DEO at the time, and we've moved away from that so that we can hold everybody accountable.